record. All right, so let me pull up this unit's PowerPoint, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about just some stuff that kind of what we need to know before we even get started. So I'm going to pull this slide up for you. If you can't see a picture of the circulation of the heart, please unmute and let me know, but I've got my screen shared. Hold on, let me see. I got to get Bella in here. There we go. All right. So, there's somebody else, Monica. Okay. So, when we talk about the heart is really a phenomenal machine. It's an extremely efficient machine, and it has a very specific purpose. And that purpose is to take oxygen and move it from the lungs to the body where it goes into the tissues. And then from the body, it picks up carbon dioxide and other waste, and it brings it back to the heart so that it can be sent out through the lungs. And so because of that, we end up with two systems, or as you call it, two circuits. So we have, whoops, let me go back. Go back. So we end up with two circuits. We have what's called the pulmonary circuit. The pulmonary circuit is going to be what's happening over here from the body to the lungs. And then on the other side, you have the systemic circuit. Systemic circuit is the part of the system that sends out all the blood to the rest of the body. So pulmonary is going to the lungs, systemic is going all over the body. So so that's kind of what we're looking at when we talk about the heart. So one of the things that I had y'all do, whoops, let me get rid of that. Clear. There we go. So one of the things that I had y'all look at whenever you were going through these notes was that you had to draw the pathway of blood. And the pathway of blood, you notice that one half of the pathway was red and the other half was blue. And just kind of a notation that you need to know. Typically, when we talk about the pulmonary side of the system, we look at blood that is going to be oxygenated, that's coming from the lungs, lots of oxygen, so it's a deep, bright red. Then the systemic, because it's coming from the system and it's picking up the carbon dioxide, lost all of its oxygen, we typically show that with the blue. So when you colored that picture, the blue part is your deoxygenated blood and your red part is the oxygenated blood. So one of the things about this, though, that is so important is that when we talk about the pathway of blood, it's that blood has to follow a pathway in a very specific way. And so that leads us to our discussion question. So your discussion question is going to be about heart valves. So right here on your notes, I think this is like slide 81, something like that. You may want to put a little DQ. This is where your discussion question is going to start. So when we talk about the heart, because we need blood to come from the lungs to the heart to the body, then from the body to the heart to the lungs, we have some traffic cops. And the traffic cops that we have are what are known as our heart valves. Heart valves are responsible for making sure that blood goes in one direction from the atria to the ventricles. Now, when you were looking at the beginning of these notes, there were four chambers in the heart. You have the two atria that are on top. We call those the receiving chambers because all of the blood that comes into our heart has to come into either the right or the left atrium. Then we have what's known as the discharging chambers, which are your right and your left ventricles. They're called discharging because their job is to contract and send the blood either out to the lungs to be reoxygenated or out to the body to deposit oxygen in the tissues. And we need to make sure that blood doesn't get mixed up. If deoxygenated blood gets sent out to the tissues, then it's not serving its purpose. And if oxygenated blood is making it back to the lungs, then we're wasting time, and therefore we're losing efficiency. It becomes an inefficient machine. Heart valves are very important in making sure that that blood goes in the right pathway. Some of you may know someone who's either had a hole in their heart, or they could have potentially had heart valves that didn't close like they were supposed to. And in those cases, if it's in an area of the heart that could make a problem for oxygenated blood to be sent where it needs to, they may have to go in and patch it or go in and replace valves. And so our heart valves are the ones that make sure that we go in one direction, our blood stays in that direction, and that it doesn't have an opportunity to have any backflow. So let's look at those heart valves. Now, I will say, when we listen to our heart, and I wish we were back in school face to face, because one of the things that we do at this time is I give you stethoscopes, and you spend some time in class listening to your heart. Now, I know you might not have ever listened to your heart, but I know you've probably heard a heartbeat. The very first video we watched in class, they had a heart beating, and you hear that boom, 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 boom. That noise that you're hearing, those are actually the valves opening and closing, opening and closing. And those happen in response to our blood pressure. When you take a blood pressure, which is one of the things that we usually learn how to do in my class, you have two types of blood pressures. You have a top number, and that is your systolic, which tells you how much blood pressure is happening when your heart's going through that contraction. And then you have your diastolic, which is on bottom, and that's your blood pressure when your heart is relaxing. And your heart valves open and close, open and close, open and close based on how much blood pressure we're experiencing at that time. So we're going to start by looking at the two types of heart valves. So we have heart valves that are responsible for making sure that blood stays from the atrium to the ventricles. And then we have heart valves that make sure that blood, when it leaves the heart, it's not allowed to come back in. Okay, so the first ones that I want to look at today are what is known as the atrioventricular valves. We call those the AV valves. And just looking at the name, if you dissect that name and look at it, you will kind of get an idea of where you would find them. Atrioventricular means that these are going to be found between the atrium and the ventricles. Okay, so let's look at how that affects, or what it's going to do. So when we talk about our blood pathways, blood is going to come in through the atrium because they're the receiving chambers. It's going to go down to the ventricles, and then the ventricles will contract to make sure that that blood goes to wherever its destination would be. Now, on your right side of your heart, that is going to be your pulmonary circuit. Remember, it's going to be backwards on your picture because it's the patient's point of view. But on your right side of your heart, which is on paper looks like the left side, and you should have colored it blue on your pathway of blood, that's the blood that's come back from the tissue. It's deoxygenated. It's laden with carbon dioxide and other waste products. And its job is it needs to go into the heart. The heart needs to contract and send that blood back to the lungs so that it can release all the waste and pick up fresh oxygen to take to the tissues. So on the right side of the heart, the blood comes in from the body, goes into the atria, down into the ventricles. Now, we want that blood to stay in the ventricle. We don't want it to go back into the atria, because from the ventricle is where it's contracted and sent out to the lungs. The AV valves, their job is to make sure that that blood stays down in the ventricle. Without the AV valve, every time your heart would contract, that blood would blow back into the atrium, and then you're not doing any efficiency. It's not efficient at that point. So on the right side, your AV valve is a tricuspid valve, which means when you look at it, it has 3 flaps. On the left side, it is a bicuspid valve, which means it has two flaps. And one pretty cool thing about these is that they have something that is called chordae tendineae. Chordae tendineae, these are little white collagen cords that are sometimes known as the heartstrings. But their job is to keep the valves of the heart from blowing backwards. I'm sure that everybody in here at some point or another has gone outside when it was really windy and you had an umbrella. Like on Sunday, for instance, if you had gone outside with an umbrella on Sunday and all of that wind and storm, what happens to your umbrella whenever you step out into windy weather like that? Somebody unmute and tell me what happens to an umbrella. Yeah, it flips inside out. That's exactly right. Yeah, and then your umbrella can be all torn up, which is just absolutely terrible, and nobody wants that to happen. Well, your valves are exactly the same way. Your valves are kind of interesting because your valves, they are held together by these heartstrings to keep your valves from blowing inside out, much like an umbrella in windy weather. The heartstrings are responsible for doing that for us. Those heartstrings, they are the ones, oops, sorry, I'm trying to play with this whiteboard and I've never done it. These heartstrings, they're responsible for making sure that those valves stay in place, because what's going to happen is as blood fills up the ventricles, the pressure is going to rise. And just like a windy day with an umbrella, what could happen is that it could blow backwards. So let's look at this. This is a picture of an AV valve, just to kind of give you an idea. So here's our AV valve, and they are right here between, go back. There we go. So here are our AV valves. They're right here between the ventricles and the atria. So blood is going to come in either from the body on the right side, then the left side is coming in from the lungs, okay? And the whole point is we want to fill up these ventricles full of blood so that when it contracts, that blood goes where it's supposed to. So let's just focus on this side of the heart right here. This right side of the heart, this is the blood that's going to the lungs to get more oxygen. So we want to make sure that deoxygenated blood stays in the heart and then goes to where we need it to, which would be the lungs. We don't want it to go back into the atrium and take up space. We don't want it going out into the body because it's not going to do us any good. We need that blood to go in one direction, from the atria to the ventricles to the lungs. So what happens is, in the heart, when the blood comes in, it's going into the atria, and then it's going to move into the ventricles. And as the blood begins to fill up the ventricles, pressure is going to rise. Think about a water balloon. The more water that you add to the balloon, the pressure goes up, 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 up into that water balloon. And if you didn't have it tied off, all the water would spray out of the top of the balloon, correct? Well, we want that blood to stay in the ventricle. So that's what happens with our AV valves. When the pressure goes up, the AV valves close. And they close so that way the blood stays put in the ventricles. Then when the heart contracts, that blood's going to be shot out to either the lungs or the body, okay? So, is everybody with me so far? Anybody have any questions? Okay, a couple more things. Let me see if I can get this to work. Move. There we go. All right, so AV valves, they are going to be open when the heart is relaxed, because they're going to be accepting blood from either the body or from the lungs. So when your heart's relaxed during one of those pauses, the AV valves just hang open. Blood trickles in from the atria into the ventricles, and the ventricles pressure begins to go up, 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 up. When the pressure hits its peak, it forces the AV valves to slam shut, and that keeps the blood inside the ventricle. Then when the ventricle is going to contract, the blood will have to go out another route, and we're going to learn what that is in just a minute. So this keeps the blood from backflowing into the AV valve, okay, the atrium by the AV valve. So you need to remember, when pressure is down, the AV valves are open. When pressure is up, the AV valves close, okay? The chordae tendineae, their job is to be a guide wire to anchor those flaps in place so that they don't blow backwards, okay? Does anyone have any questions on AV valves? Anybody? Okay, so when pressure's down, AV valves are open. When pressure's up, AV valves close. And then the chordae tendineae, they keep those valves in place. Okay, so there's one other type of valve that I want to discuss, and that is called the SL valve, semilunar valves. All right, so the semilunar valves, these are found at the large vessels that are entering or exiting the heart. We're going to find SL valves around the pulmonary vessels that are either coming from the lungs into the heart or going to the lungs from the heart. So think back to that blood pathway. On the systemic circuit, or let's look at the pulmonary circuit. On the pulmonary circuit, which is the right side, the blood that's in our body has been used up. All the oxygen has been depleted. The carbon dioxide and waste are in that blood, and that blood needs to come to the heart and go back to the lungs to be replenished. So what happens is the blood enters into the atria, into the ventricles contract, or the ventricles fill up, the AV valves close, then the ventricles contract to send that blood from the right side of the heart over to our lungs, okay? Well, the thing is there's a big vessel right there that runs from the heart to the lungs. We don't want blood backflowing from that vessel back into the ventricles. Once you've moved past a certain point, we want that blood to keep going. A good example would be on the left side of the heart, or the aorta. So let me see if I can find a picture of that real quick. Right here. This picture right here is the pathway of blood, okay? So when the blood comes in and it goes into the atria to the ventricles, and the ventricles to either the lungs, on the left side it's going to go to the body. One big vessel that we find an SL valve in is the aorta. The aorta is the largest artery in the body. It holds oxygenated blood that has come straight from the lungs, and now it's going from the heart out to the body to replenish our tissues with oxygen. So right here in this area is where you're going to find the aorta. It has this big archway. Okay, you've looked at pictures of it on your diagrams. So when the blood comes in through the atria, so let's say that, let me see if I can pull up a white screen. There we go. Okay, so let's say that this is our heart right here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a very crude heart. This wouldn't be a Monica drawing by any means. Up here we have, this will be our right side of the heart. Right here will be our AV valves. This is going to be our left side of the heart. That's going to be our AV valves. So this side right here is our pulmonary. And then this side right here is our systemic. And I want to spend some time right here talking about this. Coming from the ventricle on the back side of the heart, you have this really big vessel known as the aorta. Okay, the aorta is really, really big and thick. When we dissect, you see this really big stump, and that's the aorta. And it's from the left ventricle on the back of the heart. There is the vessel attaches, and the blood, whenever this contracts, the blood goes up through the aorta and out of the heart. So I always like to use an analogy of skee ball. Have any of y'all ever played skee ball before? Skee ball is that video game that looks kind of like this. You've got a little thing up here with these rings. There may be a ring here and a ring here and a ring here. And you'll have this really long ramp and you roll the ball and you try to get it in the rings. Have any of you ever played skee ball? Yeah, skee ball's lots of fun. Okay. So if you've ever played skee ball, you know, it takes a couple of tries to figure out the best momentum to give the ball. Because if you throw it too hard, the ball will go way up here, hit, and then just roll down and you lost a turn. But if you don't roll it hard enough, then it'll stop right here and then just roll back and you've lost a turn. So what happens is, I like to think of skee ball and the aorta the same way. Okay. So here's our aorta. Comes out like this. It's coming from the heart. So here's our heart. So when the ventricles contract, the blood goes rushing out of the aorta, just like this. Okay. And just like that ball and skee ball that didn't get enough momentum, this blood that was the very last to leave the ventricle, sometimes it goes up, but it doesn't have enough momentum to get over the arch in the aorta. So just like a skee ball, what happens is when it gets to that area and doesn't have enough momentum, it's going to come back. Well, the same thing happens to the blood. If blood is shot out and it doesn't have enough momentum to get over the arch, it's going to roll back. But we don't want any blood coming back into the ventricle. We need the blood to keep moving forward, because if we allow the blood to come back into the ventricle, we lose efficiency, okay? So that's where our SL valves come into play. The SL valve's job is to make sure that when the blood comes out of the aorta, if it doesn't make it over the arch and that blood trickles back, the SL valves close to keep that blood in the aorta and not back in the heart. We don't want blood back flowing into the heart. We need the blood to stay moving forward. So on your pictures or on your presentation, let me pull it back up. When you get to, whoops, where'd it go? There we go. All right, so let me pull it back up. Here's the SL valves, okay? So when the blood goes up and out of the heart, if it doesn't have enough momentum, it's going to come right back into the ventricles, and we don't want that. So the SL valve's job is to close to keep blood moving forward, not moving backwards, okay? Think about, you know, someone who's doing crowd control. The job is to keep people going forward, not coming backwards, because then that just clogs up traffic. So SL valves are the opposite of AV valves. AV valves close whenever pressure is up. SL valves, they are going to close when pressure is down. So when pressure is down, they close. When pressure goes up, they open to let the blood pass through and go to its destination, whether it be the lungs or it's the body. Okay, so when we talk about valves, really and truthfully, the main thing that you need to remember is that you need to remember that key thing about pressure. Okay, so maybe on a sheet of paper over to the side, write this down. What is that? Okay, on AV valves, when pressure is up, they close. When pressure is down, they open. SL, when pressure is up, they open. And when pressure is down, they close. And because they are opposite of one another, that's what allows the heart to keep governing the pathway of blood, to make sure the blood keeps moving forward, that it never rolls backwards. Okay? Does everyone understand that? Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so on your discussion question for the test, you're going to have to compare and contrast AV and SL valves. Okay. So is everybody good? Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so so that's your discussion question. There's a couple things that I wanted to go over with you. If you will notice in the classroom, I have like our welcome announcement with information about what's going on this week. You need to make sure you're getting your assignments in. I also want to talk real quickly about that meme assignment because that's a major grade. Make sure that your meme covers a specific topic in this unit, okay? Leah did a really good one. Leah, I'm gonna show yours if I can find it. Hold on. I think I've got it on here. Let's see. Let me see. Well, I don't see it. Leah did a really good one, and it was basically she had all the white blood cells, and each one of the Scooby-Doo group was one of the different white blood cells. And there it is. Show us, Leah. Everybody look. Let me take Leah off mute so you can see it. All right, Leah, show us yours. Tell us what it says.
Well, there's a picture of a monster, and it's the COVID-19, and the gang is each one of the red, white blood cells, and it's going to get the monster. Yeah, inspiration. We have watched every single Scooby-Doo there is.
There you go. So something for COVID. I love it. So nothing, I mean, it doesn't have to be this, grand whatever, but I do want it to cover a specific thing, okay? Not just learning about it, but something specific. So like in her case, she used all the different types of white blood cells. So there's tons of different ways that you can do this. If you want to draw one, that's fine. If you want to use a meme generator, that's fine. Whatever you want to, you just need to send that to me, okay? Second thing that I want to talk about, in your email inbox, you're going to see two emails. The first email that I want to talk about is about a little project that I'm putting together. It's basically for my own personal benefit, but I just thought it would be kind of cool. I know that this is something that none of us have ever lived through before, and so I'm asking students to take part in like a montage that kind of talks about what all's happened during this whole stay-at-home quarantine kind of thing. And so I'm asking everybody just to shoot me a sentence or two, a paragraph, an essay. You can even use something you may have had to do for an English class, something that you've experienced, learned, didn't like, scared you, whatever, that deals with COVID-19 and this whole quarantine. You can even shoot me a picture, or it could be a news article, something that you just, can't, really wrap your head around, or just really was impactful to you. So you're going to do that, and you're going to send it to me, and then I'm going to put all that together into kind of this commemorative montage. And I have teachers participating, and some parents are participating. And so if you'll get those into me, there's really not a hard and fast deadline, but I'd like to start working on it by the weekend. So if you could get them into me maybe by Friday, don't overthink it. It's not a grade. This is just something kind of for me. And then whenever I finish it, I'm going to give you a copy of it so that you'll have it one day. You can tell your kids about, you know, what all happened during this kind of unprecedented time. Second thing, you're going to have an email that talks about a scholarship opportunity. Some of y'all are super duper duper creative, and some of y'all like to, you know, TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. And there is a huge scholarship opportunity through Khan Academy. It's worth $250,000. And all you have to do is create a 3-minute or less video that explains a difficult concept in any form of science. It could be something in, you know, A&P, it could be something in biology, it could be chemistry, whatever you want to talk about. I sent you the information about it, and I also sent you a link to a YouTube video that gives you a little more explanation about it. And I will be happy to help you in any ways if you want to shoot me some ideas, and I'll tell you if I think it's, you know, strong enough of an entry or if you need to go back to the drawing board. So, you know, you've got plenty of time. So why not try to get, you know, $250,000 to go to school on? That would easily put you through college, pay for everything that you needed for college, and for some of y'all for postgraduate college as well. So that would be a phenomenal opportunity. Plus, if you win, I get $50,000 and a $100,000 makeover for my lab. So, you know, get on that. Let's get that done. Okay, so that's in your inbox as well. So look at it. It'd be something neat that some of y'all could do. Okay. Last thing, today, sometime around 2:30 or 3, Governor Tate Reeves is supposed to address the state. And it is said that he's going to talk about school and school closures and things like that. Right now, we have no idea. I think I've gotten about 20 text messages in the last 2 or 3 days about school, and I honestly have no idea. Mr. Fortenberry has no idea. Mr. Hallmark doesn't have any idea. I don't even think Mr. Penton has an idea right now, because we have to report and follow the rules that are set forth by our state school board, our district school board, and of course the governor's recommendations. So as soon as we know something, you know, I'll let you know. But if you want to today, tune in. I think he'll be on Facebook Live, he'll be on YouTube, and usually he live streams off of Twitter, and then a couple of the news networks usually pick up his press conferences too, like channels 3 and 16, something like that, so that you can see what he says. Okay, and as soon as I hear anything about it, I will let you know. Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody. Does anyone have any questions about anything?
Oh, will this be on YouTube again?
What's that? Yes. I'm going to put it on YouTube, and I'm going to see if I can find a better explanation. I promise you I do a better job of doing this normally. But I'm kind of out of my element because I'm used to having my whiteboard where I can draw all over it and it doesn't delete on me and stuff like that. But you know, go back and look through it. It's not really a difficult concept. You just got to make sure you know all the vocabulary. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? Okay. Well, if we need to Zoom again Thursday before the test, just shoot me an email. You know, Wednesday night, say, hey, I could use a little refresher or whatever, and I'll be glad to schedule a Zoom for us. I will have information about the test in the classroom tomorrow, so that way you can kind of get an idea of what to expect on Friday, what time your test will be open, all that good stuff. Okay, and hopefully we'll have some ideas about school either tonight or tomorrow. Okay, so is everybody good?
Yeah.
All right, anybody have any other questions, comments? All right, well, we're going to wrap it up, and I will see you next time. Okay,
All right.
bye everybody.
Bye.